Sometimes you come across a question that just stops you in your tracks, one that really challenges how you see existence itself. Well, in the Quran, there's this incredible moment where the disbelief in life after death is framed not just as a simple denial, but as a statement of pure, utter astonishment. We're going to dive deep into this powerful theological argument and see what it tells us about creation, about belief, and really about the human condition.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the astonishing question itself. Then, we'll try to understand the logic behind that disbelief. After that, we'll get into the Quran's powerful counterargument. Then, we'll explore a fascinating metaphor about shackles on the soul. And finally, we'll see the ultimate consequence that all of this leads to.
Okay, so our entire conversation today, it really centers on one specific powerful verse, the 5th verse from the 13th chapter of the Quran, which is known as Surah al-Ra'd, or the thunder.
So this right here, this is the core challenge. The verse starts by pointing out just how amazed the deniers are by the idea of an afterlife. Their question is basically this: once we're dead, once our bodies have turned to dust, how could we possibly be brought back into a new creation? You can see how this question is coming from a purely physical, material understanding of the world.
Now, to really get what's going on here, there's a key term we've got to understand: mod. This is the theological concept of the return or the resurrection. And it's not just about coming back to life. It's about the complete recreation of a person for the day of judgment. This is a very idea that the disbelievers in the verse find so totally astonishing.
So why? Why did they find this concept so unbelievable? From where they were standing, what was the logic that made resurrection seem, well, utterly impossible?
Here's their question, isolated and direct. It's a challenge that comes straight from observation. I mean, they look at a body after death, they see it decay, turn to soil, get scattered by the wind. From that purely physical viewpoint, the idea of just reversing that entire process, it seems to defy all logic.
And that's the crucial point, right? It's all about their worldview. They see decomposition as a one-way street. Once a person's body is broken down, scattered, and gone, that's it. It's the irreversible end. From this materialist standpoint, bringing it all back together isn't just a miracle, it's a complete absurdity. But this is where the Quran presents its own powerful counterargument. And it's brilliant. It doesn't just dismiss their disbelief. It actually meets it head-on with a logical rebuttal that's designed to reframe their entire understanding of power and creation. The whole rebuttal boils down to this incredibly powerful rhetorical question, for them and for us. I mean, really think about it. Which act is actually more astonishing? Creating a complex, thinking, feeling human being from lifeless matter, like dust and clay, for the very first time, or simply gathering those same original elements to recreate something that already existed. This slide really puts the two arguments head-to-head. On one side, you have the deniers saying recreating from dust is impossible. But on the other side, the divine argument completely flips the perspective. It says, hold on, the original creation was the real mind-blowing miracle. What you're so astonished by is, by comparison, a much lesser feat.
The logic here unfolds in 4 really simple steps. Let's walk through it. 1. Human beings were first created from lifeless stuff like dust or clay. 2. That first act, that is the primary miracle. 3. So reassembling a person from their original parts is actually a simpler task than that original creation. And that leads to the clear conclusion in step 4. If a power could accomplish the greater, more complex act, then of course it can accomplish the lesser one. It's a simple but absolutely profound argument.
Okay, so after laying out that solid logical argument, the verse takes this fascinating turn. It shifts from pure logic to this really powerful metaphor to describe the internal state of those who just can't accept this truth. It talks about shackles.
So here's the line right from the verse itself. And it's a pretty stark and powerful image, isn't it? Shackles upon their necks. But what does this actually mean? Because the commentary on this makes it very clear we're not talking about physical chains here. The Arabic term used here is al-Aghlal, and this refers to metaphorical, spiritual shackles. These aren't chains of iron, but bonds on the intellect and the soul. They're the internal barriers that literally prevent a person from seeing a truth that's right there in front of them.
So what do these spiritual shackles actually look like in our lives? Well, they can be our own stubbornness, our ingrained habits that we refuse to question. They can be those overwhelming worldly desires and passions that blind us to anything beyond the material here and now.
They're the shackles of ignorance and prejudice that just slam our minds shut. And crucially, they're the very things that stop someone from using their own reason to follow the logical argument we just talked about.
And this all builds up to the final part of the verse. It explains the ultimate consequence for those who remain bound by these spiritual shackles, either unable or just unwilling to break free.
The verse concludes with this very solemn statement. It creates a direct line connecting that state of disbelief, which is symbolized by the shackles, to an eternal outcome as companions of the fire.
Now, what's really important to understand here is that this outcome isn't presented as some kind of arbitrary punishment. Instead, it's shown as the direct consequence of a choice, the choice to remain bound by these self-imposed shackles and refuse to see a bigger reality. In this view, the state of being shackled simply becomes the eternal state.
And that really leaves us with a powerful question to reflect on, doesn't it? If the source is arguing that the most profound shackles aren't physical chains on our bodies, but are actually bindings on our minds and hearts, what are the shackles of today? What are the assumptions, the biases, the habits that might be limiting our own perception and understanding of the world around us?